Grow the fuck up or I'll fucking kill you. That's a direct quote. That was in response to my having sent a less than complimentary picture of David drunk in Mexico to a few friends. Mike and Paula, copies of that picture have been made and left in each of your guests' room tonight. To better understand the person David has become, it really helps to go back and look at what, or better yet, who has influenced him to this point in his life. See, David is the type of person that becomes obsessed with certain people for certain periods of time. And I think it goes without saying that David's first obsession, since I've known him, was none other than his mother, Sherry. To demonstrate this, let me start by asking this question. How many of you have ever known a 13-year-old boy whose favorite movie was Evita? Well, now you do. See, in his pre-pubescent stage, David wasn't like all the other boys. Sure, David was heavily involved in after-school sports. After all, Arthur was given some say in his upbringing. But after football, basketball, and lacrosse practice, while the rest of his teammates were going to each other's houses to play Mortal Kombat, David was going home with Sherry to read the Jewish Book of Why and listen to Mozart. When most of the other kids were making mixtapes of Ace of Base and Boyz II Men, David was rocking out with Sherry to cantor Debbie Friedman's version of Mao Tsur and Rabbi Abramovitz's version of Shalom Rao. And many years later, in 2006, when all of his friends were watching one of the greatest games in Steelers history, the one where Jerome Bettis fumbled diving over the goal line only for the Steelers to end up winning that game and ultimately the Super Bowl, David was in Florence enjoying a fantastic bottle of Chianti with his mother. Needless to say, David has grown up to become rich in culture, and for that and so many more reasons, he has his mother to thank. David's next big influence, although David will remain a mama's boy forever and always, was his now clean-cut, well-manicured philanthropist and financier of a brother, Doug. Keep in mind, Doug wasn't always so well-kept. As a matter of fact, now that I think about it, Doug was downright disgusting growing up. I'm seriously struggling to think of a time when I came to the Silverman household and wasn't greeted by two brothers with crumbs on their faces, ketchup stains on their shirts, and holes in their socks. From afar, it appeared there was some sort of competition between the two over who could eat themselves to death first. Not surprising, considering their father's lifelong dream was to see his sons win a football state championship. Me too, Art. Me too. I can only imagine what this wedding would be like if the Doug-obsessed David planned this wedding. Instead of Jen doing a bouquet toss, I could see David demanding that all the single women engaged in a ho-ho eating contest. It's just an idea. At that time in his life, David did anything and everything that Doug did. Well, everything besides talk to girls. For example, Doug said he hated soccer, so David made it his #1 prerogative in life to disassociate himself with any other kids in middle school that played soccer, some of which had been his best friends for years. Perhaps a better example will be how Doug went from being a Redskins fan to a Broncos fan to a Steelers fan in a matter of seasons, and each time still followed suit. The Silverman brothers switched teams faster than Curry used to switch women. Sorry, McKenna. In 1997, Doug left the Silverman household to attend college at Princeton, and for the first time in his life, David was left to think for himself. Bad idea. Within months, David had pierced his ear, smoked a cigarette, grown extremely long hair, also known by South Americans as chapas, and was a full-fledged international soccer fan. Oh, and he became obsessed with a beautiful, tall, guitar-playing Argentinian by the name of Patricia. Coincidence? I think not. David's life returned to order just a few years later when he and I visited Doug at Princeton. The brothers' love for food was on full display yet again when, attending a nationally ranked Princeton basketball game, Doug starts quietly chanting the name of his favorite sandwich place. His favorite sandwich place off campus, Hoagie Haven. Sure enough, Silv joins in, and before long, the 8,000 in attendance that night at Javelin Gym were chanting, Hoagie Haven, Hoagie Haven. Art and Sherry, I can only imagine how proud that story must make you feel. Eventually, David went to a college of his own, the University of Michigan, where, despite not receiving a scholarship to play club lacrosse, like high school heartthrob Bobby Gronke, he would become an All-American midfielder by his senior season. Guys like Mike Groff, Eric Rimke, and the aforementioned Bobby served as his primary influences. And having said that, it's no wonder that David got really into Natalie Merchant at the time. There's just one more person outside of the men of Melrose Place with whom David has become obsessed that I'd like to mention. Allow me to tell a quick story. About a year ago, Silv was giving a speech at my rehearsal dinner and admitted that when I first met my wife, Dana, all the way back in 1965, he was a little jealous of all the time I was spending with her. Well, Silv, as long as we're making these sorts of revelations, I must admit, when a few years ago you told me your new roommate was a tall, cardigan-wearing Iraqi man who styles his hair like David Beckham and who thinks Tony Romo is the epitome of clutch, I was a little jealous too. And then I met the guy. This Rico Suave wannabe turned out to be Adam El-Jabori, otherwise known by his nickname Booty. If you haven't been introduced to him yet, he was the one who gave the mediocre speech just a few moments ago. For about 2 years, they lived together. Arab and Jew, Democrat and Republican, LeBron lover and LeBron hater. One a proponent of shaving his chest, the other a proponent of shaving entitlements. The arrangement worked when, in many ways, they were complete opposites. But in writing the speech, I really began thinking and realized there was something much more deeper at play here that made their relationship work. And frankly, I'm shocked nobody has thought of this yet. As I mentioned earlier, Adam's nickname is Booty, and some of you guys know that David affectionately calls Jen Tushy. So think about that for a second. For 2 years, David was spending every single night with one of two people. Tushy or Booty. Wow. Certainly sounds like a fetish to me. Today, David is a myriad of contradictions. He's the observant Jew who unsuccessfully pledged the fraternity of Sigma Chi, which translated from Latin means sons of Christ. He's the former speechwriter for the House Minority Whip, who was once called socially awkward by a college girl he was dating for his inability to communicate. He's the all-county linebacker that never learned how to properly throw a football. He's the avid follower of WWE wrestling, who doesn't bat an eye when a metal chair gets broken on a human being's back, but who still cries every time he watches the scene of Lion King where Mufasa dies. And he's the history buff and poli-sci major that has apparently never read Thomas Paine's most famous work, Common Sense. Seriously, he has none. Despite the various influences in Silv's life who have molded him to be the person he is today, not surprisingly, there has been only one special someone that has had Silv's attention long enough to get him to realize that glasses in the dishwasher go upside down, you don't put tin foil in the microwave, linguine marinara is pronounced linguine marinara, and you don't order the marinara without the linguine. Congratulations, Jen. This is truly an accomplishment that should not go unnoticed. But your job is far from done, Jen. In fact, it's really just beginning. There is still a lot Silv needs to learn, and on behalf of all of us on the groom side tonight, we are truly relieved that we can pass the torch on to you. Jen and David, Danny and I love you guys very much. You two are perfect compliments to one another, and I say from the bottom of my heart that Dana and I cannot wait to spend the rest of our lives with you guys. Mazel tov.